Hey, what's going on there, folks? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. A combination of all of them, I suppose. How's it going? It is the Earthmaster out here on this end of the weekend, Sunday, January 7th, 2024. It's about 12:27 p.m. here. California time. Latest activity shows a 1.0 into the California area. We'll get to the rest of this activity here in a little bit. I want to cover real quick. Got an update on this interesting signal that showed up on Yellowstone here yesterday. Kind of thought it was a pretty intense earthquake swarm. Kind of looked like it. I was a little skeptical though because it doesn't quite match some of the previous swarms that we've seen. It did show up across a handful of stations out here, and I wrote the scientist in charge up there at Yellowstone last night, and he quickly responded. Appreciate the quick comeback there. Mike Poland there from the USGS, scientist in charge at Yellowstone. I sent him just a real quick message here that I noticed Yellowstone has been having a couple off and on swarms since the 1st of January. On 1/6, which is yesterday, I noticed what looks like a majorly intense swarm in the northwest area of the park around Maple Creek. Was this earthquake activity or maybe wind or ice? It did show up on nearby stations. Please see attachment, and I sent a couple different attachments there of the noise in question, and this is what Mike had to say about that. Yellowstone started the year with a nice swarm on the Nez Perce Creek, which is pretty close to this region, with a couple of M3 events. But what you saw around noontime on the 6th yesterday was wind. For about an hour, especially right before noon, wind speeds at one site were consistently over 10 miles per hour, and that site is sheltered, so it was probably quite a bit stronger than that in more open areas. But that's why the pattern appears so random. There is almost no signal on the YNM station, which is located in the Norris Museum building, and little to no signal at the YNB, which is sheltered. But you can see more of a signal at other stations just a few kilometers around those sheltered sites. That's because they're open, right? They're open to the environment. Storm noise really can look like seismic activity, but it will also have very different frequency content than real earthquake swarms. So I appreciate that there, Mike. I was kind of leaning towards the earthquake activity, but it was questionable. And again, this was from yesterday. He's talking about YNM, which is sheltered out here inside of a museum, right? But it would still pick up, underground movement or earthquake activity, and that one did not. So it appears these other stations out here are subject to environmental noise, and we did see some wind kicking up, but I didn't quite think it was strong enough to make this type of signal. So I guess we could rule out this being earthquake activity as far as that cluster goes. Now, earthquake activity yesterday obviously looks more well-defined. This is all sporadic and chaotic looking. In the summertime, when these guys get thunderstorms up there, we can see the thunder, the wind pick up, and heavy rain show up on this, on these graphs as well. That looks somewhat similar, but I wanted to double check. I wanted to make sure that we got the correct information out here. So apparently it was some wind noise. Now, earthquake activity, obviously, the Norris Museum station out here does pick up, what looks like some activity, but earthquakes. Obviously, earthquakes are going to look like, let's see if we got anything here today. I'm wanting to say this is one around Mary Lake. A couple of them down here, it looks like. These do look like well-defined earthquakes. That I can definitely see on Norris Junction as well, but it's localized here, it looks like, to the Mary Lake area. But we'll have to double-check this, from time to time if we see any other readings out there that look a little odd, so to speak. There's that activity there at Mary Lake showing up as well around the borehole station where some of that earthquake activity is taking place. So we can put that to rest in terms of that noise from yesterday. Just always good to double check, right? I mean, I'm not up there at Yellowstone, so I really can't say 100%, But Mike is up there, and that's a good source of information there. I appreciate it, Mike, on the quick feedback. All right, what else we got here across the globe? We do have a couple earthquakes coming in here to the way down south of New Zealand on the divergent boundaries out here in the oceanic crust. That is a section between the Antarctica area and the Pacific Plate. Looks like there was at least two of them here, 5.7 and a 5.5 from the USGS here so far today. That could potentially amplify conditions here across New Zealand. Right now, I don't see any major uptick there. There was a pretty deep earthquake into the, looks like about the southern end of the Kermadec Trench. That's going to be that 3.8 right here. We'll check out New Zealand in just a little bit. Some further activity up north. Pretty recent earthquake here in China. A little activity across Nepal as well with that 4.5 coming in around the Himalaya Mountains. And still seeing some aftershock activity up here in Japan. That obviously could continue for weeks, if not months, as far as aftershock movement goes. A couple 4s, and there's a 5-pointer in there as well from about 4 o'clock this morning. The Kuril Kamchatka sleeping giant up here remains quiet, and a handful of earthquakes across the Indonesia Islands area. It's very typical to see that huge clustering going on there. It's just always a prime spot for a lot of earthquake activity. Reaching out here across the Pacific, we do have some further activity out here between the Pacific and the Cocos Plate here. See if the USGS is reporting that. They are. Out in these fracture zones there, the oceanic crust. Latest one shows a 4.6 earthquake. So we're seeing a lot of divergent boundary activity today around the Pacific Plate. That should amplify conditions out here towards certain regions out here in the next couple days. Let's check out the states, see what's going on up here. Still got some movement up here across the New Madrid seismic zone. A couple of them, actually. Some from yesterday, a couple from today, and outside of the New Madrid seismic zone here, just to the west around Mountain Home. Seen a little swarm going on here. 1811, 1812. Last time we've seen some huge earthquake activity out here, so a little bit of time has passed, right? Definitely could be, I don't know exactly when, but could be building up enough strain out here for another series of large earthquakes out in the New Madrid seismic zone. Got to keep an eye on that. Not for sure what the regular interval of reoccurrence is, but a little bit of time has passed since then. 2.5 way up in Wisconsin. Goodness, near Mole Lake. All right, Texas out here still getting hit with earthquake activity in the oil fields. Quite a bit actually here in the last 24 hours. Some movement outside of Big Spring as well. Lots of oil fields sitting out there in that area of Texas. We just checked out Yellowstone. Some of those smaller earthquakes there probably won't be reported until Monday morning when the USGS gets in the office there. As far as the Pacific Northwest, it's about the same. I'm sure there's some earthquake activity out here, but it seems to go quiet on the holidays and the weekends. I think they set the preliminary earthquake reporting system to like 2.5 or so. But I'm sure there's smaller activity occurring up there. They just don't have it turned on. California, Northern California, pretty quiet aside from the Clear Lake volcanic field. That's going to be the Calpine hydrothermal operations out there. That has a whole process involved in creating energy. Southern California, still watching it. We haven't really seen any major adjustment or any odd activity following that 4.2 2 days ago. That 4.2 struck up here at the northern edge of the San Jacinto fault zone, very close to the San Andreas fault here, the plate boundary itself. Down south, across the San Jacinto fault zone, it's very active, but that's almost always the case out here. They're always seeing earthquake activity across a couple different segments of the San Jacinto fault zone and the Elsinore fault. But this 4.2 struck, very close to the plate boundary, and we have not seen any aftershock activity whatsoever. So, still kind of watching that. There has been times in the past, foreshocks and whatnot, various magnitudes before before a bigger one days later. So just kind of watching it, still keeping up the Southern California earthquake watch here for today and tomorrow. But right now things are they're just kind of quiet. But still a good idea to be prepared. And of course, make an earthquake plan if you haven't already. If you guys are at home from work or whatever with the family, just kind of, it's always good to go over some earthquake plans and have like an escape route if you need to with the family. Alaska area, still seeing some movement up here across the Gulf of Alaska. There's one from yesterday, 4.3 coming in. So still somewhat active here across the subduction zone. Handful of earthquakes there above the 2.5 level. Continue to watch this area of the Pacific Plate. Hawaii. Well, Hawaii is another one here. Still waiting on some activity to stir up across Kilauea Volcano. We do have a 2.1 Pahala area, but down there below the surface in the typical zone, about 30-something kilometers or so below the surface. Always seems to be the case for these earthquakes. Nothing really going on up here across the Kilauea Volcano. Now, their site here, the USGS site, still seems to be having an issue here with, even when I click on this, it has an issue with it showing the instruments out here, so I'm not for sure what's going on. Most of the time, you'll be able to see all the GPS instruments and the tilt meters and seismograph station readings out here, but nothing's showing up. So some type of issue there. I tried it with a different browser as well. This is the Firefox browser, and these guys it's still having the same issue even on this. So I can't access the instruments whatsoever across any of these web browsers out here. So we'll have to check back on that once it's working. As far as the update goes on from the HVO site, I guess we'll have to take their word for it and see what's going on here. Kilauea Volcano is not erupting. Over the past day, seismicity has been low in the summit region, upper east rift zone, and the southwest rift zone. Still the same wording that eruptive activity could occur in the near future with little or no warning. Let's see, over the past 24 hours, seismicity has remained low in the summit region with approximately 12 small magnitude earthquakes recorded beneath the caldera. Inflation. Kilauea's summit region remains at a high level of inflation. Relative tilt is above the level reached prior to the most recent eruption back in September 2023 and is at its highest than at any time since the 2018 eruption. So we're still building underneath the surface there for the next eruption that I think is still going to happen outside of the summit region. The swarm of earthquakes and rapid inflation. Remember that a few days ago, when we seen the inflation chart really take off and go straight up. Unfortunately, I can't show you guys that because the site's not working. But they're mentioning it here. That inflation that occurred south of the caldera on December 29th and 30th indicated that magma was being intruded at relatively shallow depths. Previous summit eruptions have been marked by similar swarms of earthquakes caused by magma moving towards the surface 1 to 2 hours before the appearance of lava. This activity is currently not being detected, but it sure was. Obviously, something was taking place here. Magma was building up south of the caldera on these dates when we've seen that inflation activity really kick up. But the earthquake activity is kind of what's missing in this potential out here. Although this is the last 7 days. This goes to the first or so. And this area of interest that I think is going to maybe happen here soon is going to be across this area south of the summit region. That's just my own observation, my own guesstimate. Last couple eruptions obviously has been confined to the lava lake area. But we'll see what happens. Right now, earthquake activity, very minimal. If we see this increasing dramatically, then we know that something could be coming up here real soon. But for now, quiet out there across the Kilauea volcano, so to speak. Not, obviously not super quiet, but we'll continue to watch that and check back on it. Iceland, up here across this area, another volcano of interest. Not a whole lot of earthquake activity today. I checked this out earlier. About 47 earthquakes or so, total tally. That is including all these ones up north as well. Now, the region of interest around Grindavik, a handful of earthquakes as well across this area, and even some down south. This is where that magma dike kicked up here back in November and December, and then we've seen that fissure activity open up here right about this area around the 18th or so of December. And that eruption lasted for a little bit, and now we're just kind of at a waiting game. Although the tilt meter out here is just about, I think it's higher than the than previously at the eruption back in December. So this here, let's see, this is the Svartsengi area. Inflation level is going to be upward displacement. Here's the here is the was that around the 18th when that kicked up, or was it around the 8th? This kind of looks like it's sooner, but either way, here's the eruption. It relieved a little bit of pressure back there in December, but notice that we're starting to go back up now, and we are at its highest level than even around the day before that eruption activity, fissure activity opened up there northeast of Grindavik, north of Hagafell. So kind of at a waiting game right now in terms of seeing where this will go. Take a quick look here at the area of Iceland. Wow, can't really see too much on these webcams out here. This is the live from Iceland.is multi-view of various regions of Iceland. Normally we'd be looking at this one as far as fissure activity opening up, but doesn't look like there's much going on there. Looks like some cloud cover, and I'm sure it's kind of cold up there as well. So we'll continue to check back on that as time goes on. Space weather activity out here today. Looking at quite a few sunspots and an increasing chance here of some flaring. We do have a couple new sunspots here, 3541, 3540, making their presence known here on the Earth-facing side of the sun. Fairly giant sunspots out here. Complexity within this core looks nice. We'll have to keep an eye on this region. That we'll be getting a little bit better perspective view here as it rotates into the center area of the sun. 3530, what is that, 3536? That's the culprit here of the recent X-flare activity. Still complex, although it's starting to scoot further and further here across the western limb of the sun. Overall, though, it looks like this region to the west, trailing this area, may show a little bit of potential growth, or is showing some potential growth for some flaring activity. But at least we have some shots here of some flaring. We'll definitely keep an eye on it. Overall threat right now, 99% chance for a C flare. M flare at 45, and the X flare percentage around 10%. Proton event around 10% as well. Really haven't seen too much activity in terms of the flaring over the last 24 hours or so. Mostly C flare activity. But again, it's starting to look more active. We're not getting that straight line, which would basically show low activity. So it's starting to elevate. We'll continue to watch that. No major auroras in the forecast. And right now, things look pretty calm here across the polar regions in terms of the aurora activity. We do have, excuse me, a severe weather threat out here tomorrow. Right now, there's only a marginal risk for some severe weather out in Texas. That looks like just due to some wind potential out there. Now, day 2 is a little bit different story. They have added an enhanced region here across portions of Alabama, Louisiana, and even Mississippi. Looks like portions of Florida in there as well. That enhanced area is giving us a 10% chance hatched area for tornadoes. Now, the hatched area is basically the more enhanced region. and the strongest probability of seeing an EF2 to an EF5 tornado within about 25 miles of a point. So big time. This is definitely somewhat of a big time tornado threat here tomorrow across this area. In fact, if you're within this region, anywhere within this area tomorrow, be weather aware. Tornado potential does exist out there. Of course, you got a big time wind event and some hail as well, but I think tornado potential is at its greatest here for the main threat. So be on guard. Weather radios are a must out here. I'm sure a lot of people have them. Just pay attention to the sky tomorrow. Again, this is for Monday when everyone's probably going back to work. Definitely keep an eye on it. We'll put this into motion here and show you guys the system coming in. Colder air coming in, bringing that low pressure, bringing the moisture up from the south. That's got a perfect type of tilt here to bring that rotational type structure to these thunderstorms that may pop up. And that covers a good portion out there. A lot of heavy rain as well. And that kind of scoots off to the eastern portion of the country as we head into the middle of the week. Looks like maybe some snow wrapping back around it there for Kansas, northern Oklahoma as well. Another storm system out here across the Pacific Northwest, bringing some rain and snow. Not a whole lot of rain here in Northern California, but snowfall will be picking up. And there comes that colder air that everyone's been chatting about. A lot of blue lines out here. Those lines are indicative of some much colder air venturing down into the lower 48. And it looks to stay around for a little bit, guys, as we head this, as we pick up this model and head into the end of January. Things can change, obviously, in that time frame, but it does look like that cold air is going to stick around for a little bit. Precipitation total out here, this is just a guesstimate. Backed off big time out here in Northern California. That's a little depressing. A lot of rain out here in the east and up into the Pacific Northwest, getting hammered with rain and snow as well. Hopefully this changes, because that only shows here, at least where I live, maybe up to maybe an inch of rain. But we see a lot more than that in January, so hopefully we can catch back up and the storm pattern changes. But we'll keep an eye on it and see what Mother Nature wants to do out here. All right, folks, I'm going to jump off here. Have yourself a good day, and we'll catch you guys back out here a little bit later on this evening. Enjoy what's left of the weekend here. Have a good one, and stay safe out there.